Hey, hey! Welcome back to the Big Jake podcast. Glad you're with us. It's a little later in the day today. It's getting close to 8 o'clock at night here, and I'm a little late to record the podcast. I like to do it either before church or right after church, something like that. But I've been traveling just so much this weekend, and we'll get into that right now. So, earlier this week, I was in Hamilton, Ohio, which is in between Cincinnati and Dayton. Kind of a weird show where it was at a bar, and I think the people knew that there was a comedy show going on, but they didn't really know. It was interesting, and I was the middle guy. So there was a opener, and there was a guy that went after me. Me and the third guy both had the same amount of time, and it was fun show, but I felt that it took a while for the group of people to become an audience. And so the first 10 minutes of my set, I was just trying to get them all on the same page. Once they were on the same page, and then I could tell some good jokes and they could have a good time. So it was a little bit frustrating because it's like if they all came in there ready for comedy and gonna listen, I could give them 30 minutes that they would absolutely love. But I couldn't do that because they weren't ready for it. So they were a little squirrely. They were very nice folks. They seemed to like me enough. I had a good time and went to Ohio. Then on Thursday, so just a couple days ago, I went to Lexington. I had to leave right from my day job, go straight to Lexington, and we were going to do a show for realtors. So this mortgage company is putting on an event for realtors. Realtors. Apparently it's 2 syllables. Realtors. And I was there to provide a roast. The roast of realtors. And at the same time, so they were like, we want you to roast, but not be too mean. And definitely not be dirty. So it was a weird balancing act to do. They wanted me to do an hour, which is fine if you allow me to do my material. So, but if I'm just supposed to roast, how many roast jokes can you write about realtors? And they didn't love it all the time. Now, I say that the organizer of the event sent me a text that said, "Rave reviews, thank you so much for everything tonight. You were awesome. We will definitely be having you back." So apparently it went well. There were times when I implied that being a realtor is easy, and they didn't like that. And I expressed some reservations that I personally had with my realtor who was, helped buy this house. I was not a fan. I didn't think she did a good job. There is not a chance I'm going to call her if we need to move. I was not impressed. I was impressed with me because I found the house and I made the offer and I did all the comps and I did everything. I did a great job. She did nothing. But she got commission and I didn't. So I guess joke's on me. But the roast of the realtors went well. I told my friend Joe that I was doing this roast of realtors, and I mispronounced it. I said realtors, and he's like, it's 2 syllables, and some of them are kind of weird about that. And I said, this is Kentucky. I don't know if they know how to pronounce stuff. Louisville is 2 syllables to these people, so I don't know how many syllables realtors is supposed to have. The next day, so on Friday, I drove to Marietta, Georgia. I've done a couple of shows in Georgia. I did a World Series of Comedy event a couple of years ago at the Punchline in Atlanta. I also did part of the Mayhem Festival, a outdoor comedy event, which was okay. This was at a fancy outdoor mall. So when I say outdoor mall, we're like, okay, it's not great, but it's a fancy outdoor mall. Like, it's near a Barnes and Noble. And in the fancy outdoor mall, they have this fake grass area in the parking lot. And in this fake grass area in the fancy outdoor mall in Marietta, Georgia, they put on a free comedy show, and it was just me. And I was talking to the gal who was setting up the chairs and all that, and I said, "Are you going to introduce me?" And she said, "Nope." Like, okay. So I went up to the microphone, introduced myself, and like, let's do it. I'm supposed to do an hour, so I did an hour. It went good, I think. I brought some stickers and handed out some stickers to people, and they took them. So that's a win in my book. As long as they don't throw away the stickers or refuse the stickers, like, no, I don't ever want this thing again, it works for me. And I got paid, so it all worked out. The next day, so Saturday, I was supposed to be when I did go to Hannibal, Missouri. So from Marietta, Georgia to Hannibal, Missouri is actually 11 hours. That's a long trip. I'm going to tell you my total time for this week of comedy in just a second. But that was a long way. So I got a hotel kind of not halfway, but part of the way there in Tennessee. Hannibal, Missouri is known for being the home of Mark Twain. I didn't know much about Hannibal, and so it was Hannibal LaGrange University that I was going to perform. And I didn't really know much about them until I was actually on campus and I started looking through a few things. I looked a little bit before, but didn't have a ton of time. So now I'm on campus. I'm reading a bunch of information about the university. I had no idea it was a Baptist university. The Missouri Baptist Convention is instrumental in, I think, appointing the presidents and the trustees, and they were talked about how they were thinking about changing the name, and they ended up changing the name, and it's now Hannibal LaGrange University. It was very interesting. It's very interesting college, very nice people. I met the president. The president, very nice man, but also kind of was flexing on me a little bit, which is not, I'm not saying it's inappropriate. He's the president of a university. I'm there to tell jokes. So I'm hanging out at this little reception. I'm about to go on about 10 minutes before showtime. No one has name tags. This guy looks like a professor to me. Younger guy, though. And I start chatting with him. I say, "Hey, are you a professor?" And he says, "I'm actually the president." I'm like, "Okay, my goodness. You're the president. How long you been the president?" 6 months. Okay, all right. Pump the brakes there, Presidento. And he also teaches classes. So when I said, "Are you a professor?" he should have said, "Yes, I am a professor. I'm also the president." Not, "No, I'm the president." So just a little, maybe next time. But very nice. I actually loved that show. I thought that was the coolest show I did all week, was this spring gala at this little Baptist university in Hannibal, Missouri. Was so much fun. The students were very receptive. They were having a good time. I was having a good time. Everybody was laughing. Absolute blast from start to finish. I filmed it. I don't know if the footage is going to come out decent or if I can grab a few clips from it or not. I don't know. But I know we all had a good time, and I would love to come back because they were absolutely just an absolute blast to work with, and they liked me. So what more could you ask? Now, that show was, I think, 8 to 9, something like that. Then at 11:30 that night, I had another show in Iowa. And so it was about 90 minutes away. I had to drive from the university show to this high school in Iowa to be part of the after prom. So what they're doing is they had prom that day. And from, I think it was 7 to about 11 is prom activities. And then they do a lock-in at the high school from 11 to 5 a.m. And they hire a comedian to come in there to kind of kick things off. So I was supposed to do an hour-ish of comedy right there at the beginning from 11:30, 12:30. And I did that. They were tired. They didn't really love me. It wasn't great. It wasn't awful. They were laughing and they were enjoying it and they did decent. But my feeling is that stand-up comedy might be a little too sophisticated for high school students. There's a lot of paying attention. There's a lot of wordplay. There's a lot of like, oh, I have to know what this means and what that means. There's a level of life experience that is necessary to really appreciate what's going on. And they just don't have a lot of that. A lot of them haven't ever had a job. They're not married. They don't have kids. They don't have family responsibilities. I mean, unless every joke is about algebra, and they weren't even paying attention to algebra. So what are you going to joke about? So it's a little bit of a tricky situation, but I'm glad I did it. I'm not certain if I would do it again, but it was weird. I walked into this high school. First of all, I just have an address. I don't have any phone numbers. Nobody has contacted me. I just have an address and a time. And so I walk into this high school that's open, not locked. Walk in, go to the gym. There's a bunch of inflatable like games, including a inflatable platform that has out of the middle of it a mechanical bull. And I'm thinking, well, I now I know I'm in the right place. And also, what am I doing with my life? I'm going to be talking to 14, 15, 16-year-olds at midnight in Iowa. The weirdest thing about this group was so many of the dudes had like full beards. They looked completely grown. I don't understand when 17-year-olds now have full-grown beards. I mean, I remember every once in a while somebody having like the little wispy mustache and they thought that was cool. But now, I mean, you haven't even graduated. You're a junior and you have this beard. Something's going on in Iowa. Anyway, yeah. So for this last week, I've calculated that I was driving for 33 hours. That's like my part-time job is just driving. That includes quite a bit on Saturday. I think I had to drive 10 hours just on Saturday. 6 hours just today. So there's a lot that has to go into it. Upcoming this next weekend, I'll be in Austin, Texas. First time I've ever done any comedy in Texas. First time I've done any comedy in Austin, of course. And I think I've got 5 or 6 shows, something like that. So a good amount of shows. Should be at a comedy club. I don't know much more about it than just that. But I'm looking forward to it. And this will round out the month of April, where I have done a lot of traveling, but also a lot of fun shows, longer sets, and things like that. I don't think I'm going to do many long sets in Austin. I think there's probably going to do a lot more like 10-minute sets, which is fine. Sometimes it's really fun to do a 10-minute set after doing these hour-long sets, because you just like go in there and do a 10-minute set and rock the house for 10 minutes is sometimes really, really fun. Other things coming up is, I mentioned this last week, that I was working on voice exercises and impressions. And I did this in the last week, start doing some vocal training. There are exercises that help you move different parts of your mouth and throat and whatever that regulates the sound and how you make sound. And I started doing some of those exercises while I was in the car. I didn't do nearly as many as I could have, but something. And then, of course, in just a couple of days, the next installment of The Moth is in Louisville, and I will hopefully be able to go to that and participate and tell a story, the whole 9 yards. So that will be fun. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to tell you this story about my seminary experience. So when I was living on campus at seminary, I wasn't married yet. So after I graduated college, I moved from Lynchburg to Louisville, lived on campus there. And looking back, I got into some weird stuff. And the weirdest thing that I did is I built canvases in my dorm room. I, for whatever reason, thought I needed a creative outlet, and I had gotten into painting, doing acrylic painting on canvas, but I realized that canvases are expensive, especially the big ones. Anything besides just a flat, ugly, panel-y canvas is kind of pricey. So I was thinking maybe I can make one. So I went to Hobby Lobby and I got this giant roll of canvas, of artistic canvas. And I got this little tool to help stretch it, and I researched that you can take some different styles of wood, including a quarter round and a 1x2, and go to Home Depot, grab the wood, cut it, and then put it together with some staples and blah blah blah, and make yourself a cheap canvas. For whatever reason, I got really into making the canvases. I stopped painting. I very rarely painted, but I would rush back to my dorm from, taking systematic theology, get back to my dorm room and build canvases. I had a plastic miter box and a miter saw, just like a little hand saw, and would cut the pieces and form them and measure them all and get it all nice and good. And then I would hang the blank canvases all over the dorm. So if you walked into my dorm room, it would look like I had 12, 15 blank canvases all over the room. I would make jokes like, oh, I love the negative space on that one. But it was just what I did. And from this perspective, I can see how weird that was. It'd be one thing if I would build a canvas or build two canvases, then paint, and then build another one, and then paint, or use them. I don't know why I just liked making the canvases. I never sold anything. I just was some weird guy making canvases in his seminary dorm room. So, there you go. Pretty exciting time at this point, because as of today, I have read 49 books this year. So in 2023, I've read 49 books. My official goal for the year is to read 100 books. My unofficial goal is to read 200 books. But anything over 100 would be great. We're not even to May yet. We're still in April. And I've got 49. I will easily be able to pass the 50 mark this week. That would be obviously halfway or a quarter of the way, depending on what goal we're looking at. A couple of the books that I finished this week that I really enjoyed. So I'm going to talk about a couple of them. One I've talked about before, The Motivation Myth. I've been reading this book, kind of plotting my way through it, really enjoying it, but it's also thought-provocative, whatever. It makes me think. And it is a little on the dense side. It's not one to really power through. I'll read a chapter and then I'll think about that chapter and then I'll read a couple more pages. But The Motivation Myth, one of the more recent things that he said is to have a designated day to be very productive. So set aside a day where you get a huge amount of work done. Set timers, figure out when you're going to start, when you're going to end, what you're going to do during your breaks. And it really was reminiscent of the sort of things I did while I was finishing my dissertation. Is I would have these days when I'm like, this day is dedicated to writing this chapter, or this day is dedicated to finishing this paper, or this day is dedicated for that. And so it's that sort of idea, but I remember being very productive during those times. If you say, hey, Tuesday, I'm going to write this, or I'm going to produce that, or I'm going to set aside something to be productive, then you're more productive on that Tuesday, but also the days leading up to it, the days after it, all of it is helpful. And I thought that was an interesting idea. So I'm going to think more about that. One of the books that I finished this week is called Endure by Cameron Hanes. Cameron Hanes is a bow hunter, And he's got this catchphrase, keep hammering. The reason I even picked up the book was because David Goggins did the afterword on it. So I searched the library for David Goggins, and this book came up. So, I enjoyed the book. I thought the one negative I'll say about the book is it's a little repetitive. He's made his point, and then it feels like he says the entire point one more time. Like, okay, I got it, man. It feels like he's trying to stretch it out. But that aside, I really enjoyed the book. It's very bow hunting centered. He is adamant about being a bow hunter. I am curious about how many times this man uses the term bow hunting in this book. It's got to be 10,000 times. I don't know how many times he's just talking about bow hunting, which, as a guy who has never bow hunted or seen a bow outside of like summer camp, this is a little not relatable. But the one thing that I thought was interesting is he's got this concept of train hard, hunt easy. So he wants his training to be really hard. He wants his hunting to be very easy therefore. And hunting season is September. Bow hunting season is September, which means he can only bow hunt 1 month out of the year, which means most of the year he's preparing to bow hunt. And what does he do to prepare to bow hunt? Is this guy, he lifts weights and he runs marathons, including ultra marathons, like 100 and even 200 mile marathons. And he talks about all of the criticism that he receives. Like, hey, dude, you don't need to run 200 miles in order to be a good bow hunter. Those two things don't make any sense. And the whole time he's saying, I want to be a good bow hunter, therefore I'm going to run like a professional athlete. I think that that's interesting and inspiring in some ways. I don't know the answer, but I have been thinking about this question. You know those old analogies, is I think what their official name is. They were like the SAT style question, like bird is to nest as beaver is to blank. And you know the answer, and that would be dam. So bird is to nest as beaver is to dam. Okay. I'm thinking about one of those analogies, like marathon running is to bow hunting as what is to comedy. So like what sort of event or what sort of activity would be something that would make me a better comedian, but that wouldn't be obviously being a better comedian? So another one of those things, right? He talks about in the book that he shoots his bow every day. Well, that makes sense. Shooting your bow every day is to bow hunting, as writing comedy every day is to being a comedian. Okay. But what about the marathon running? What about the lifting weights? What about the physical endurance, all of that sort of stuff? What is that in the comedy world? Part of me wants to say it is also a physical activity. That marathon running is to bow hunting as marathon running is to comedy. But I also don't want to run a marathon. So it's got to be something else. We'll figure that out. I'm going to keep thinking about that. I think that's an interesting idea. And it's basically the idea of what can I do to get better? and trying to think, even though it sounds cliche, trying to think outside the box of how can you get better. One of the other books that I just finished this morning, in fact, was called Memory Man by David Baldacci. I've seen his name in print. I don't think I've ever heard it pronounced. But it is Memory Man. It's a thriller with the main character, Amos Decker. I like Amos Decker. He's an interesting character so far. He's a big guy, like they say, 6'5", 350. And not only is he a big guy, he's got a condition, like a mental condition where he can't forget things. He remembers absolutely everything, which is interesting to play in that arena. What if a guy that's obsessed about, solving crimes and investigating could never forget anything? Okay. So, it's an interesting idea. So far I've been liking it. I finished the first book in the series, over halfway in the second book in the series, and have really enjoyed it. That'd be Amos Decker series. The diet this past week has been decent. Did a couple of keto days, did a couple of fast days. Kind of felt back into it. When I hit the road, I tend to not go great with my diet. But not awful. It wasn't, I don't think it was awful. I am thinking about what sort of food or line of food or style of eating would help creativity. There are books that I've heard about that I haven't read, but one of them is called Grain Brain. And the thesis is bread and wheat and all of that sort of stuff makes your brain go slow. I don't know how convincing the argument is going to be made. But the idea is, okay, what sort of diet could I adopt or employ in order to further my creative endeavors? I don't know. That's what I'm thinking about. I did the wheelchair commercial bit again on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we had the open mic at Caravan. I hosted it. It was okay. Wasn't great. Wasn't bad. I don't like hosting open mics, especially. I mean, going up and down between so many different comedians. Ugh. You have to really pay attention. I don't know. It's work. Hosting an open mic is work. But I hosted it and I did the wheelchair ramp commercial bit, and it went pretty well. I think that bit is getting close to being in the rotation. I might throw that in this weekend in Austin. Get some more uses out of that. I am thinking about another story. I wrote it out. I wrote this story out. And I might use it for The Moth. Or I might not. I don't know. But it's a story of when I was in ninth grade. I was a freshman on the basketball team. And I had a skin condition. And hijinks ensue. But that's the other bit that I'm kind of working on, seeing if that's gonna go anywhere. I don't know. Anyway, well, thanks for joining me. Hope you're having a good life, and let me know what you think would be the comedy equivalent of running a marathon to get better at bow hunting. See you later.